Hey PowerWatts riders, Coach Mark here with workout number 4 as part of the PowerWatts home training program. Our workout today is called Alternative Approach. So we have a little bit of time before we get started, so I want you guys to make sure that you have all your trainers set up, you have all the files you need downloaded from my report, and then you can sync the start of the workout just right in about 35 seconds to be able to follow along with all the cues that I'm going to give. So make sure you get everything set up, and if it's not set up yet, put it on pause, get everything set up, and then restart the video. Alright guys, so we're going in 10 seconds. So we're about to get underway. Our warm-up's going to start with just a gentle little ramp up to give you a little bit of time to get ready for what's coming. Alright guys, so here we go, we're underway, starting with a 4-minute ramp up, starting from about 60%, from about 40%, we're going to slowly build it up to 60%. So welcome to workout number 4, Alternative Approach. So today's workout, we're going to be focusing on threshold power development. So threshold power, that's usually power outputs that are somewhere between 90% and 105 or 95 and 110, depending on who you ask. Those are typically called threshold power developments. These are the type of power outputs that you guys would hold, say, during something like the PowerWatts 20-minute time trial, where you try to hold 95 or 98 or 100% continuously for 20 minutes. Also, earlier this season, we did a 30-minute time trial as well, where we had the goal to ride at about 90 to 95% for those 30 minutes. Those are all considered threshold efforts. So what does that mean exactly, threshold? So when we're talking about threshold, it's the point at which your body is kind of starting to switch between predominantly using one energy system and then starting to dip into another energy system. So what does all that mean? So when your powers are a little bit lower, you guys can use predominantly what's called your aerobic energy system. And when you're using that energy system, you guys are generating energy or fuel for your muscles to contract, but it doesn't really create lots of waste products or metabolites in your bloodstream or in the muscles themselves when you're doing that. So when that happens, it usually means that you could sustain the effort for a very long duration of time, or pretty long duration of time. Whereas, say if we were to go to the other end of the spectrum and say we looked at like a 30-second, like really maximal effort. When you're doing a 30-second really maximal effort, the way that your body needs to produce energy, the rate at which it needs to produce energy is very high. So as a consequence of that, you actually end up creating lots of metabolites. Probably the most famous one, most of you guys know, is probably lactic acid. So as you guys produce those really high powers for short durations, your body produces lactic acid and other waste products in the muscle, and sometimes that interferes with the muscle's ability to contract. Sometimes it creates a little burning sensation in the muscles themselves. So that's your anaerobic energy system. So aerobic energy system, you don't really generate any of those waste products, and at the really high-end powers you do generate some of those waste products. So now there's a point at which you kind of switch from being able to ride for a very long period of time without generating a lot of these waste products, to the point where you get to that anaerobic power and you're really generating those metabolites quickly. So that point of transition is called threshold. And so what's interesting about threshold is when you guys are riding at that rate, your body is producing waste products, metabolic waste products, but you're able to clear them out at the same rate that they're produced. And this is what's really cool, actually. Your body is not wasteful whatsoever. Let's just use the example of lactic acid or lactate. As your effort level goes up, and say you start riding at 95% or 100% or even 105%, your body starts to produce lactate as a waste product. But your body can actually recycle that lactate and reuse it for energy. And that's what's really interesting about threshold training. So your body is producing those waste products, but they're able to recycle it just as fast, so you can continue to use it as energy without it accumulating and interfering with your body's ability to recruit your muscles. All right, guys, so we're done that first little ramp up. So now we're riding at 60%. So why did I tell you all that? Well, the important thing to know when we're training threshold is one of the key things to improve your threshold is to teach your body to use any buildup of lactic acid, lactate, or other waste products and recycle them and reuse them for energy. And that is what we are trying to do with today's workout, which we've called alternative approach. We're going to be using alternations or over-under drills, where the over parts or the higher power parts are going to produce metabolic waste products, and the lower power efforts are going to give your body a chance to learn how to recycle those more efficiently to reuse them for energy for the next higher power effort. Okay, so in our warm-up now, we're about to do our first little pace increase. We're going to go to 75%. So let's go to 75%, 60 to 80 on the RPM. So a rather low RPM here. If you guys take a look at the workout profile on the bottom, you can see right away in the warm-up, we're actually starting with the higher power, lower power approach. We use this for the warm-up of workout number 3, power surge as well, and we use this approach in the final drill in workout number 3 to kind of try to prepare you guys for what we're doing today. So keep that key element in mind that I described before. When you go to a certain level of power output, your body starts to produce waste products like lactate, like lactic acid, but given time, given patience, given practice, your body learns to recycle those for use, for reuse as energy. So the alternative approach or the alternations approach that we're going to use today is going to help improve your ability to recycle the building up of waste products in your muscles and in your bloodstream. Okay, so let's go to 65%. So how does that happen? Well, in our workout today, if you guys look at the workout profile, we have 4 main drills, and they're all rather long drills. The first one is 10 minutes, the second one is 5 minutes, the third one is 8 minutes, and the last one is 7 minutes. So if we add that all up, that's 30 minutes of total time of work that we're going to be doing today. And the power outputs that we're going to do, we're always going to alternate a power that's a little bit above your, or right at or a little bit above your threshold, and a power that's a little bit below your threshold. So when you guys go up to the power that is at your threshold or a little bit above it, your body's going to produce metabolic waste products. You might not feel a burn in the legs, but that's just a consequence of the muscle contractions that are going on at those power outputs. And then when we go to the lower powers, you're going to be able to practice recycling that energy. Okay, so now we're going to go to 80%, 90 to 110 on the RPM. Here we're going to get the legs spinning a little bit more. Then the most important piece to know about that is that the intended training benefit or the intended training effect, it's equally important to be putting out the high powers and the low powers today. If you put out the high powers and then you go below the low power targets, you're not teaching your body to recycle that buildup of waste products while you're still riding at a relatively high rate. Eventually you want to teach yourself to recycle those waste products at very high powers, like 90%, 95%. So the low powers today are just as important as the high powers. So I want you guys to be putting your attention and your focus just as much to the high powers as to the low powers today. And at every one of those low powers, you can say to yourself, beautiful, I'm teaching my body to recycle any waste products that were produced on the previous high power. Okay, guys, so let's ease it down to 70% watts. And so the slight difference between today's warm-up and the warm-up we did in workout number 3. In workout number 3, after each of the high powers, you guys went back down to 60%, which is really more of a recovery power. Today what we're going to be doing is as the high powers go up over the course of the warm-up, the low powers are also going to go up. And this is really to prime your system to be ready to come off of those high powers and go down to those low powers without dipping below them. So you guys might find the last couple minutes of this warm-up challenging, but then you know you'll definitely be ready for the drills that are coming up after we're done the warm-up. Okay, so let's just bring our attention back to the warm-up here. We're about to go to 85% watts, 60 to 80 RPM. So back to a lower RPM. All right, so 3, 2, 1, 85%, 60 to 80 RPM. So if you're wondering why we have these low RPMs as part of our warm-up, because in our first drill, so it's 10 minutes our first drill, and we're going to be alternating 90% and 100%. When you guys are doing the 1 minutes at 100%, the RPMs are going to get progressively lower on each of the reps. And the reason for that is we want to simulate the demands of climbing a hill, similar to what we did at the end of workout 3. So if you've just finished workout 3 a day, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, that feeling is still fresh in your legs. So we're going to start the workout with that. So we want to make sure that you're ready to hit those low cadences. That's why we put them into the warm-up. So we got another 10 seconds at 85%, and then we're going to go down to 75%. So really start paying attention, guys, to those low powers, not dipping below them, bringing it down to 75% over a couple seconds, and then settling in there nice and steady. Excellent work, guys. So now the next one, we're going to be going to 90%, somewhere between 90 and 110 on the RPM. And on this one, the slightly higher RPMs are just to make sure that you guys don't get bogged down at that low cadence right away in the warm-up. We want you to be able to come back to those high cadences even after you've done an effort at lower RPM, because that's going to be one of the keys throughout the workout. If you choose to go to a lower RPM to hit the higher powers, you don't want to be grinding at the low powers. You want to be able to get that cadence back up to change the muscles that are working and change the pedaling technique. So we're about to go to 90%. I haven't mentioned any RPE scores yet, but for those of you guys at home, without the power, when we go to 90%, let's bring it up to the 7.5 out of 10 effort. Okay, so here we go, guys. Up to 90%, 90 to 110 on the RPM. RPE, maybe 7.5 on 10, maybe a bit higher if you're really uncomfortable at the high cadence, but do the high cadence anyways. We got to practice that, get your body used to it. So fantastic. So we're settled in at 90%, 90 to 110 RPM. So our next low power is 80%. So if your cadence is quite high right now, so let's say you're at 100 or 105 or 110 RPM, a really helpful little trick when you have to go from the 90% down to the 80%, go 1 or 2 gears harder. So when you hear the beep, or when you see there's 3 seconds left, or I'll cue you when there's 3 seconds left, go 1 or 2 gears harder to bring that cadence down right away. That gives more pressure underneath your feet and makes it easier to settle in at 80%. And then when you settle in at 80%, you might adjust the gears to go into easier gears. Okay, so everyone get ready. So go 1 or 2 gears harder now. Feel that pressure underneath your feet and bring it down to 80%. And you might stay in that gear for 10, 15, 20 seconds, even if the cadence is a little low. And now start to adjust the gears to get to your RPM comfort zone at 80%. So if you choose to do any of the high powers later in the workout at a high cadence, which is great, it's a great idea to practice that, when you go down to those lower powers, even though the power is going down and you might think you need to go into an easier gear, go into a harder gear initially to get that foot pressure and then slowly bring the watts down. And after you've brought the watts down, then you might adjust back into an easier gear. I'll remind you guys of that a little bit later. That's a very useful technique for riding outdoors as well. After you've taken, let's say, a pull at the front, as you're going to the back of the pack, going a gear or two harder to make it easier to settle back in to your line. And then you go into easier gears once you're in the draft. All right, guys, so last minute here, up to 95%, let's say 8, 8.5 on 10 effort, and now 60 to 80 on the RPM. So low RPM again. Do your best to stay sitting for this. Any of you guys that really need to stand up for a bit, no problem, but challenge yourself to stay sitting for most of the minute. Okay, so this minute's going to really set the tone for the rest of the workout, because all the drills that we're going to be doing, all 4 of those drills, the average watts are going to be 95%. However, you're never actually going to hold 95%, but the average watts across all of them is going to be 95%. And we're going to compare and contrast the difference between the feeling of holding an average watts of 95% using different pacing strategies. So we got 15 more seconds, guys. Hold that 95%, bring it up to an 8, 8.5 on 10 effort. Work in those lower RPMs, work in that force production at the lower cadence. and then we're about to come to the end here. All right, so good stuff, guys. So we have our rider on screen. It's going to be doing a little calibration here, so we'll get the calibration done. That's just a little reminder of what it's like to be in studio and get to do that calibration after the warm-up. All right, so we're back on board here, so that's done. Okay, so our first drill, it's 10 minutes. We're going to be alternating, so we still got plenty of rest here. 10 minutes, alternating 1 minute at 90% and 1 minute at 100%. The first minute at 100%, you guys can see it in the description on the center of the screen here. We're going to be going from between 80 and 100 RPM. So that's a pretty wide window. So you can choose where you want to go in that window. Then on each subsequent rep at 100%, the RPM window is going to shift 5 RPM lower, 5 RPM lower, 5 RPM lower. So the second rep, 75 to 95. The third rep, 70 to 90. So I want you guys, whatever you choose to do on that first one, say you choose to do 92 RPM or whatever, try to do about 5 RPM lower, or maybe 1 gear harder on the second rep, and then another 5 gears lower, another 5 RPM lower, and another 5 RPM lower on each subsequent rep. So this drill, the 10 minutes, it averages out to 95%, even though you never actually hold 95%. And there's another measure of effort that we call intensity. And what intensity does is it accounts for the fact that it's exponentially more difficult to hold a higher power than it is to hold a lower power. So when you're holding the higher powers, your body has to exert a lot more than the lower powers, for the reasons I described before with all those metabolic waste products, among other things. So the measure of intensity, it accounts for that. So this 10-minute drill, if we calculate the intensity of it, it comes out to 96%. So what does that mean? Even though the average watts is 95%, it's equivalent to doing 10 minutes at 96%. And you can see those two numbers are really close on this drill, but we're going to see what those numbers are on the subsequent drills, on the second drill, third drill, and fourth drill. So I'll point that out before the start of each one. So this one, because the powers are really close to one another and you're not doing massive accelerations and decelerations, the average watts and the intensity are very close to one another, and you can try to anchor in to see what that feels like, and then we're going to compare it to the next one. So we're about to get started. So we're going in 10 seconds. We're going to go to 90%. All the 90% segments, they're at choice RPM, choice body position. So let's go up to 90%. I'd encourage you guys on this first one to try to set the tone to use a slightly higher RPM at the 90%. So whatever your RPM comfort zone is, add maybe 5 RPM to that and then settle in there. Those of you guys without power at home, let's start this off at like a 7.5 out of 10 effort. And the 100%, we'll call it at this point an 8 out of 10 effort. And then as the drill progresses, the 90% are going to move towards an 8, even an 8.5 out of 10. And the 100% are going to move up to maybe a 9 out of 10. So if you're thinking about the feeling of it without seeing your power, that's what you're going for. So hopefully everyone's settled in at 90%, maybe a slightly higher than normal RPM for yourself, but not by a lot. And now we're about to go to 100%, and we want you guys between 80 and 100 RPM. So you can aim bang in the middle at 90, you can grind it a little bit more at 80 if you want, or you can spin it up at 100. So here we go, guys. Somewhere between 80 and 100 on the RPM, 100%. Now, whatever you choose to do on the RPM on this one, I'm going to ask you to do 5 RPM less on the next one, and that's to make the effort more muscular, to simulate as if we're going up maybe progressively steeper hills on each of these efforts. So fantastic. So we're riding at 100% watts. This is definitely a threshold power. Your body, even if you don't feel it, as a consequence of the muscle contraction, it's producing lactic acid and lactate and things like that, and that's exactly what we want. And then when we go down to 90%, slowly ease it down to 90%, hold that 90%, and your body's going to learn to recycle and reuse those waste products as new energy, which is fantastic. So we got 10 more seconds at 100%, and then we're going to go down to 90% and ease those watts down nice and slow. So 3, 2, 1, and let's ease it down to 90%. Excellent work, guys. So a power like 90%, don't expect it to feel like recovery. I had mentioned that the RPE of something like this might be 7.5, maybe even 8 out of 10 at this point at 90%. There's not a lot of recovery. There's no recovery happening at 90%. It's just a little bit easier than 100%, so you might be able to adjust cadence, adjust body position just enough so you can set yourself up to go back up to 100%. You can regroup a little bit physically and mentally before we go back to the high power. So things are looking good. Next one, take a look at what your cadence was. If you have access to all your power stats and cadence stats, look at what your average cadence was for the previous minute, and let's go 5 RPM lower. If you don't have any of that, try to do 1 gear harder than you were in on that previous 1 minute exercise. That usually brings you down about 5 RPM. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, up to 100%, 75 to 95 on the RPM now. And so if you go middle of the road, you'd be at around 85 on the RPM. So good work, guys. Holding on to that 100%. Practice being as steady as you can. Sometimes there's an RPM that allows you to be steadier, and if we're not in that RPM window for you right now, you could always try a slightly different gear in order to steady out the power, or you can bring your attention to the pressure underneath your feet and trying to keep it consistent from one pedal stroke to the next to keep that power as steady as you can. Okay, so solid effort at 100%. We got another 15 seconds, okay? And really focus. It's not recovery the next minute. It's 90%. It's still effortful, just a little bit less effortful. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and ease it down to 90%. Good work, guys, and hold it nice and steady at 90%. Good work on the power, guys. Okay, so just find that sweet spot for the power output and the cadence. You might choose to go a gear or two easier here. You might choose to stand up for a little bit at the 90%. Find something, some way that you feel like you're getting, not recovery, but you're able to regroup and find different muscle groups or different parts of your thighs to help generate this power output. Okay, so our next one, 100% watts, another about 5 RPM lower than what you did on the previous one. So either look back at what your stats were and go 5 RPM lower, or go 1 gear harder than you were in on the previous one. And let's stay sitting all the way here, guys. So we're about to go to 100%. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. 100% watts, 70 to 90 on the RPM, about 5 RPM less than the previous one. Excellent, guys. So settle into that 100%. And now I just want everyone to take a moment to relax the face, neck, shoulders, and elbows. Okay, drop those shoulders away from the ear. If you have tension in your face or your jaw, let it go. Focus on just smooth breathing, staying nice and loose in the upper body, and getting that strength and that weight down into the pedals instead of wasting energy being tight up in the handlebars or tight up in the face or tight up into the neck. Okay, so nice and loose. Even if this is starting to get pretty uncomfortable, convince yourself that this is something that you can maintain. The term is often comfortably hard, or you want to learn, you want to become comfortable being uncomfortable. That's another saying in the world of endurance sports. Okay, so let's go ease it down to 90%. So another solid effort at the 100%. Now we're going down to 90. Remember, this is just as important as the 100%. So hold that 90%. This alternations approach is a really great way to develop that threshold power, specifically because we go a bit above the threshold and a bit below the threshold. So now that we're a bit below, let's really hold on to it super steady. I mean, I say a bit below, but it's like really borderline for a lot of riders, right around that 90% of being below threshold at least. Okay, so we got 2 more 100% segments left. And now I want you guys to really start to lower that cadence a little bit more. So about 5 RPM lower this time, maybe even more. You might even go 10 RPM lower if you want, but I want you guys to stay sitting still. So it's like you're climbing a hill, sitting somewhere between 65 and 85 on the RPM. So up to 100%, 65 to 85 on the RPM. This 100% is definitely getting tough. We're looking at maybe a 9 out of 10 for those of you guys that don't have the power output at home. Those of you that do have the power output, focus on being steady, work that cadence. One of the tricks that we talked about in previous workouts at the lower RPM like this is to either sit further back on the saddle and work on the full extension of the leg, or to sit further forward on the saddle and let your weight fall into the pedals instead of putting the weight on your handlebars to help get the strength of your legs and the weight of your body down into those pedals to sustain the power. So 15 more seconds like this, guys, and then super important, you got to hold that 90% for a minute. That 90% is coming up in 5, 3, 2, 1. Ease it down to 90%. And on this one, I'd encourage you guys to really get that cadence up at the 90%. Not crazy high. You don't have to go to 110, 115 RPM unless you're comfortable there. But let's go up higher than 85 RPM if you can. See if you can do it at 86, 88, 90, 92 RPM. Because the last minute, it's going to be another low RPM segment. So let's try to change the muscle groups a bit by getting that cadence up. But do whatever you need to do to make it work. But challenge yourself to bring the cadence up. So we got another 30 seconds like this. And I want you guys to be excited about this next one because it's the last minute after we have a 3-minute recovery period. Definitely right now you want to be at maybe an 8, maybe even 8.5 out of 10 effort. Those of you guys without the power output at home. And this last minute, 9 out of 10. So it's going to be sitting 60 to 80 RPM. Challenge yourself to hit that power at these lower cadences. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Last minute of our first drill. It is our longest drill, so a lot of you will be happy to get this 10-minute one in the books. So we're almost there, 45 seconds. Find that rhythm, find that technique that works best. And I want everyone to make sure the last 30 seconds here is done with really a high quality technique. So relax again, those face, neck, shoulders, elbows. Drop the shoulders away from the ears. Focus on that smoothness of breathing and do the work with the legs. Excellent work, guys. Each pedal stroke, get that force down into the pedals. We're coming up on the final 10 seconds, and I want you guys to ride it through all the way to the end. No stopping early here. Every second counts for a workout like this. So 3, 2, 1, and back it off. And 3 minutes of recovery after that 10-minute effort. Wow, well done, guys. So that was a 10-minute drill. We alternated the 90 and the 100%. So that means the average was 95%. And remember, I mentioned before the drill started that the intensity of that one was 96%. The intensity was a little bit higher because you had a few power fluctuations, but there weren't any crazy power fluctuations. So the intensity and the average were very similar. So take a moment, reflect on what your perceived exertion for that drill was. Those of you that have been working on perceived exertion, great. But those of you that have been working on power, think about how difficult that was. What was the most difficult part of that drill? Where would you rank it on a 10-point scale? So now we're going to go into our next drill. So our next drill, we're going to continue this alternations approach, but we're going to be lowering the lows and making the highs higher. So we're going to create a bigger discrepancy between the two. The good thing about that is that when you go to those higher powers, you more quickly produce those waste products that you want to practice recycling when you're at the lower powers. The hard part is at the lower powers, you got to make sure you actually hit those lower powers and that you don't go way below them. Because sometimes when you're on a really high power, you tend just to shoot those watts all the way down to a recovery power. Our low power target here now is 70%, and our high power target's 120. So we're going to go a 50% change in power output. So that's going to take a little bit more focus for you guys to do properly. Now, the discrepancy between the low and the high is much bigger. So on this one, if we averaged it out, the average is still 95%, but the intensity of this one comes out to 104%. So that's almost 10% higher. So this drill, which is a total time of 5 minutes, it's equivalent to riding 5 minutes straight at 104%. So that's what happens when you start to vary those powers more and more and more. The metabolic cost on your body, the physiological cost on your body is much higher. So that's why this next drill, even though the average is 95%, the intensity is equivalent to 104%. So we're going to get started in 30 seconds. The low powers are at 70% for 25 seconds, and the high powers are at 120% for 25 seconds. Oh, and I didn't mention, this time, all of the high powers we're going to be doing standing up. So I want you guys to practice transitioning from 70% up to 120% standing. That was a big part of workout number 3, so I think you guys have a good handle of the technique if you've had a chance to do workout number 3. Okay, so let's go to 70%. So nice and steady at 70%. So 70% is definitely well below a threshold power. Okay, some people can even somewhat recover at 70%. It's not the same thing as riding at 30%, but you can almost recover a bit at it. So now start to get the gears ready to transition into standing. So maybe go to about 70 RPM or so. Go a gear or two harder to get ready, and up out of the saddle and kick it up to 120%. And as you guys come up out of the saddle, get those force down the pedals, then you might have to adjust the gears to sustain the power output now. Stay standing all the way. So we got another 10 seconds of standing. Just take note of what's your RPM like, what's your body position like, is it working, or do you want to change something on the next rep? Okay, and now have a seat and ease it down to 70%. And once you're in at 70%, you're going to want to go several gears easier here in order to bring that cadence back up a little bit. You don't have to go super high on the cadence again, but you want to bring it back up, especially if you're standing at 70 or 65 or 60 RPM. So now we're about to do our next standing. Okay, so get into your standing gears. So 3, 2, 1, and up out of the saddle. A couple hard pedal strokes to bring the watts up. Adjust the gear, and now settle into 120%. You might try the exact same tactic as the first rep, or you might try something different. So we got 10 more seconds, guys. Hold that standing power. And I want everyone to really stare at your power output now. Stare at your power output. Let's bring it down to 70%. Okay, so those of you at home without power, at the 70%, we're looking at maybe a 6.5, 7 out of 10 effort. And at the 120%, let's go to like a 9 out of 10 effort. And the 70% are going to get progressively harder as this goes. So those of you at home without power, get ready to kick it up to a 9 out of 10 effort. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and up out of the saddle, up to 120%, working that leg speed, adjusting the gear until you find your comfort zone for the standing, and now hold it nice and steady the rest of the way. So you guys might be up in the hoods, you might be down in the drops, just take note of your position. On the next one, I want you guys to try a slightly different standing position. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and let's go down to 70%. Focus on the 70. Focus on the 70. It's crucial here. Good, good. Now settle into that 70. Way to be, guys. Now on the last rep, if you were standing on the hoods, I want you to stand in the drops on the one that's coming up. If you're in the drops, I want you to stand on the hoods. Let's change that body position a little bit and see how it affects the legs. Okay, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, and up out of the saddle. Get that power up. Adjust the RPM, and now switch into that body position that's different than the previous rep. Okay, try this different body position. Even if it feels a little bit more uncomfortable, just take note of where it feels uncomfortable. So we got a couple more seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, and ease it down to 70%. Really focus on the 70. Once you get to 70, couple gears easier to bring the cadence up a bit. Excellent work. Okay, and now on this last one, on this next one, I want to use an even different standing technique. So try something you haven't stood before, you haven't tried yet. Maybe your hips more forward, maybe your hips more back. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and up out of the saddle. Get up to 120%. Another thing you guys could try is instead of driving down on the pedals, you could drive your knees up towards the handlebars. That's a different feel as well. So try something a little bit different. Even if it gets a little bit more challenging. And then in the final minute, or in the final 25 seconds, you can use whatever technique you want. So 3, 2, 1, and let's go down to 70%. So really work that 70%. Those of you guys who have power at home, it's probably even an 8, 8.5 out of 10 now at the 70%. It's definitely going to feel harder than a 70% normally would. And the last 25 seconds, I've asked you to try a couple different techniques. Now I just want you to go back to whatever technique you feel works best for you. So get ready, guys. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, and up out of the saddle. Last time at 120% standing. Put that effort in, guys. Work that standing position. Maybe you're pissing the legs fast. Maybe you're doing lots of weight transfer left and right to generate that power output. But keep it up for another 10 seconds. All the way, guys. Don't slow down. Don't slow down. Keep going, keep going, keep going, and back it off. And 3 minutes of recovery. Wow, great exercise, guys. So while it's fresh in your mind, compare the perceived exertion of that one compared to the perceived exertion of the first one. So remember, the first one, it was 10 minutes, 95% with an intensity of 96%. 95% average. This one, 5 minutes, so half the duration. Average power the same, 95%, but the intensity all the way up to 104%. Did you feel that change in intensity? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you found it easier because of these shorter efforts. Or maybe you found it a lot harder because you had to kick it up that 50% to go from 70 to 120 each time. And just take note of that. That tells you a little bit where your strengths and your weaknesses lie, whether you found the first one harder or the second one harder. And then you can choose exercises or choose workouts or different riding styles outside to try to pull up those weak points. So well done, guys, on that one. So we have already accumulated 15 minutes at an average power of 95%, again, without ever holding the 95%, but we've accumulated 15 minutes at 95%. So I mentioned that because on this next drill, it's 8 minutes. So if we take 15 and we add 8, that brings us to 23 minutes. So some of you guys might start to really run into trouble near the end of this drill because we're getting to that 20 minutes of total time. Just like in a 20-minute time trial, the difficulty of the effort, it really starts to accumulate a lot more in that second half of the 20-minute time trial or any type of 20-minute effort. So if all of a sudden you're riding on this next 8-minute drill and it gets really, really difficult, it's not because you're doing anything wrong, it's because you're getting to that, close to that limit of 20 minutes of threshold work. Even though there's recoveries in between, it doesn't matter. It's still an accumulation of time at these threshold powers. So our next one, you guys are going to be doing 48 seconds at 80%, 48 seconds at 110%, and 1 rep at 110% is going to be sitting at a moderate cadence or moderate to high cadence, 85 to 110 RPM. And then the second 48 seconds is standing. And we're going to alternate that way. The second 48 seconds at 110%. So this combines elements of the first drill and the second drill. So we have the sitting element of the first drill, we have the standing element of the second drill. Okay, so we're about to get started, and for those of you keeping score, this one, the average power for the 8 minutes is 95%, and the intensity comes out to 98.5%. So it's definitely harder than it appears on paper when you just look at those power outputs. Okay, so let's go to 80%, guys, for 48 seconds, choice RPM. Whatever RPM you want. And then the next one is going to be sitting. So the first 48 seconds, the third 48 seconds, and the fifth one are going to be sitting at high cadence. And the second one and the fourth one are going to be standing at choice cadence. Okay, so hopefully you're settled into 80%. Those of you guys at home, if we factor in the accumulated fatigue, like if you don't have power meters, this 80% is probably going to feel very much like the 90% felt in the first drill. So maybe a 7.5 out of 10. And then when we go to the 110%, let's go up to maybe a 9 out of 10 effort or so. gradually. By the end of the 48 seconds, you want to be around that 8.5, 9 out of 10 effort. Okay, guys, so let's go up to 110%. 85 to 105 on the RPM. So you got to spin the legs a little bit faster than what we were doing earlier, working those lower cadences. Now we're back to the 85, 105 window. Find whatever feels most comfortable in that range and practice holding it as steady as you can. So good work. You can think back to the RPM Mania workout and some of the skills that we practiced at the higher cadences, going forward on the saddle a little bit, tucking the bum a little bit, dipping the toes, anchoring the butt down to the saddle. All these things will help get more of your energy down into the pedals instead of wasting it, transferring that to the bike instead of directly to the pedals. Okay, so now really focus here. Go 1 or 2 gears harder and ease it down to 80%. Ease it down to 80%, and once you've settled in at that 80%, then go 1 or 2 or 3 gears easier, whatever you need to get that cadence back up a little bit. So remember that trick, because there are 3 high cadence segments, or there's 2 high cadence segments left here. After those higher cadence segments, go 1 or 2 gears harder as you ease it down to 80% to avoid dipping below the 80%. Okay, so hopefully everyone's comfortably settled in at 80% here. So the next one is standing. So take a look at your cadence. Wherever your cadence is now, go possibly a gear or 2 harder to get to say around 70, 75 RPM. And then stand and give a quick acceleration in 3, 2, 1. And stand and give that quick acceleration. And now go 1 or 2 or 3 gears harder until you find that gear that allows you to settle in to whatever standing position you want on this one. Find that position that works best. Or you might cycle through different positions. You might spend the first half on the hoods, the second half in the drops, or the first half pushing down and the second half driving those knees up towards the handlebars. Find what works and stick to it here, guys. So 20 more seconds of this standing effort. Then we go back to that 80%. It's going to take a lot of focus to go back to that 80%, especially after this standing. So as you guys sit down, keep pressure underneath your feet. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Now keep the pressure underneath your feet as you slowly move down towards the saddle and go into easier gears once you've settled in at 80% to try to change the muscles that are working a little bit. Bring that cadence up to access different muscle groups and different pedaling styles. Okay, so now you have an idea of what to expect from the sitting one, what to expect from the standing one. So now we're going to repeat. So next up, 48 seconds, 110%. 85 to 105 on the RPM. Those of you guys that were already close to that 105, stay there. Those of you guys that were at like 85 RPM, see if you can go a little bit higher on this one. See if you can go to 90, 91, 92. See if you can get up into the 90s. Those of you guys that were in the 90s, see if you can, in the low 90s, see if you can bring up in the high 90s. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Let's get the leg speed up. And experiment with these cadences, guys. Like, if you're at 92 RPM, it's working great, and you go 1 gear easier, and you're at 97, you can't do it, no problem. Go right back to 92. But challenge yourself on the cadences. See if you can use your leg speed to generate the power. So slide forward on the saddle. Get those toes down. Anchor your butt down to the saddle. Tuck the hips just a little bit. All super helpful tricks. So we're almost there, guys. So we got 15 more seconds at this higher cadence. Keep the pedaling quality really high here, nice and steady on that saddle. Getting all your strength, all your force down into those pedals. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit of discomfort now at this point. Okay, now let's ease it down to 80%. If you're getting any burning in the legs or if the breathing's getting really heavy, perfect. When you're riding at 80%, your body's recycling all that waste, all the waste products that you've produced to this point, or it's learning how to do so more efficiently at least. Okay, so good stuff, guys. So just while we're at the lower power, do a quick spot check. Relax the face, neck, shoulders, elbows. Okay, try over the next 20 seconds to do a nice full exhalation to reset your breathing rhythm. In case you started to breathe a little bit fast, we want to reset a steadier breathing rhythm here. So next one is standing up. So take a look at the cadence. You probably want to be at about 70 RPM when you initiate the standing. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and initiate that standing, guys. And then when you feel the need, go 1, 2, 3 gears harder to sustain it in that standing position. Well done, guys. And when you're standing, you could really transfer that weight left and right. Try to get your weight into the pedals to assist with that force production. And definitely a lot of force is going to be coming from the legs. Some of you guys might find the standing a bit harder on the breathing, and if that's the case, again, bring your focus to those fuller exhalations. Try not to raise the shoulders up towards the ears. That interferes with your breathing rhythm. Just keep it smooth. 10 more seconds, guys. Then we go to 80% for the last time, so I want everyone to be really attentive on the 80%. Try never to drop below 80%. Stare at your watts, stare at your watts. And let's ease it down, ease it down, ease it down. Stay above 80, stay above 80. And settle in just a little bit above 80% as an added challenge. Good way to be, guys. Great effort. And our final 48-second surge that's coming up here, it's going to be sitting at a slightly higher cadence, 85 to 105. And that brings us to the end of this 8-minute drill. If you're really having a hard time now, that's what's kind of expected. We've passed 20 minutes at threshold power, so there's lots of new fitness to be had. So figure out a way to make it happen. If you're really, really struggling and you can't do it at 85 to 105 RPM, find whatever RPM gets it done for you. Okay, so last effort, looking at least a 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10 effort. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Up to that 110%. 85 to 105 on the RPM, if you can. If you can't, if you have to stand up, stand up. But make sure you get that power output. If you can do it sitting and you're comfortable and you're at 85, 90 RPM, try 1 gear easier. Find that cadence that really stretches you just a little bit here on this last 48-second effort. So keep it going, guys, keep it going. Got a 3-minute recovery coming up, so I want you guys to put that effort in all the way to the end of this exercise. No slowing down early. So 10 more seconds. So we're getting there, and when you hear the beep, when you see 3 seconds left, just increase that cadence a little bit, not to slow down. Increase the cadence a little bit. Up, up, up. And now ease it down for a 3-minute recovery period. Wow. Great drill, guys. So that brings us to 23 minutes of threshold development. Super job. So while it's fresh, take a moment to reflect. Where does that fit in terms of the difficulty compared to the first 10-minute exercise and the second 5-minute exercise? The power outputs definitely fell right in between. The durations also fell right in between. One of the challenges, though, is there's a certain amount of accumulated fatigue that you have to factor in at this point, too. But just think about it. So where did that fit in? Was it easier than the first one, harder than the first one? Or easier, harder than the second one? And what made it harder? Was it the cadences? Was it the fact that you had to sit? Was it the fact that you had to stand for 48 seconds that made it harder? Become really aware of where your strengths and where your weaknesses lie. And that's going to be really important for our last exercise here. Because our last exercise, there are no cadence targets, no body positions, nothing like that. You guys choose what works best for you. And especially at this point in the workout, we have 23 minutes of threshold fatigue in the legs. We're about to do a 7-minute exercise to bring us to 30 minutes of total time at threshold power. So in our last one, think back to everything you've done thus far. Think back to the progressively lower cadences of the first one. Think back to all the standing of the second one. Think back to the alternating sitting and standing of the third one. Which tactic felt best? Or which combination of those tactics felt best? Because you're going to have to use those on this last one to really get the most out of it, to really get through our final 7-minute block. So our final 7-minute block, it's 35 seconds at 75% and 35 seconds at 115%. So we're looking again at a pretty big difference between the two, a 40% difference. So this exercise is going to average out to 95% for the 7 minutes, but that intensity measurement of this one is 101%. So imagine right now if I asked you, hey, ride for 7 minutes straight at 101%. How does that make you feel? Does that make you excited? Maybe, probably not though. But let's see how that happens when we're doing it, alternating these higher powers and these lower powers. Some of you guys might find it harder than riding steady. Some of you guys might like the fact that it breaks it up and makes it feel a little bit easier. but it is equivalent to riding for 7 minutes straight at 101%. This is a real challenging way to end this workout, guys, but we're really trying to stretch that threshold fitness today. Okay, so we're about to start our last one. 10 seconds, we're going to start. We're going to go to 75% for 35 seconds. Choice body position, choice cadence. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. So 75%. So 75%, for those of you guys that don't have power output at home, at this point in the workout, I'd say it's probably close to a 7 out of 10 right now. Maybe 7.5 out of 10. Then when we go to the 115%, we're looking at 9 to 9.5 out of 10 by the end of the 35 seconds for that first one that we're going to be doing. And then the subsequent ones, you'll probably be up to 9.5, maybe 9.75 on those last few. Okay, so let's go up to 115%, however you want. Go for it, guys. Go for it. I know a lot of riders will really benefit from standing all the way on a lot of these. Some of you guys might benefit from sitting. Those of you guys that are going to be doing this sitting, take notes of your cadences so you can really play around more with the cadences, because there's a lot more room to play with your RPM when you're sitting than when you're standing. There's much smaller comfort zone for the RPM window when you're standing. Okay, so we're almost done this first 115%. Now everyone stare at your power. Let's set a good rhythm back down to 75 without going below. Okay, so let's go down to 75. Okay, it's going to take a moment to find the rhythm back at 75%. Okay, excellent. So everyone's back at 75% here. And now think about which strategy you want to use on this next one. So it's 35 seconds at 115%, whatever strategy you want. But I want you guys to try to do it keeping a relaxed body and a relaxed mind. As the discomfort goes up and up and up, don't show it anywhere on your body. Don't show it anywhere on your face. Okay, so let's give that a try. So 3, 2, 1, and up to that 115%. Keep the face, neck, shoulders, elbows relaxed. Get that pressure down into the pedals. If you're standing up, you're going to have to put a bit of force in your hands, and that's okay. But if you're sitting down, don't grip those handlebars for nothing. Just keep the hands on the bars without squeezing excessively. Okay, now you don't want anybody to know the level of discomfort you're in or the level of effort you're putting out right now. Keep that face relaxed. Keep that good body position. Keep super smooth pedaling style. A couple more seconds. So 3, 2, 1, and ease it down to 75%. Good, and just try to regroup at 75% here. You have 35 seconds. It's going to take 25, if not 30 seconds for you to feel like you've regrouped a little bit, and then we're going to jump right back into the next high power. But I challenge you again on this next high power one. If somebody was looking at you, I don't want them to know the level of discomfort or the level of fatigue that you're in right now. Don't show it on the outside, okay? And let's see how that goes. So 3, 2, 1, and up to 115%. Perhaps the most well-known pro cyclist for not showing any discomfort is the climber Nairo Quintana. Regardless of how high or low his power output is on a climb, he always looks the exact same. So I want you to try to embody the spirit of Nairo Quintana here. We got 15 seconds to go. And then we go back to 75%. 5, 4, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. 3, 2, 1, and ease it down to 75%. Well done, guys. Okay, so we're halfway through our final drill. Just as you settle into 75%, just take a moment to reflect. What worked best on those first 3? Or maybe you tried something that didn't work at all. Find something that works for these last 3. On this next one, though, again, I want you to try not to show any of that fatigue or any of that discomfort in your face or in any of your body language. Let's do it super high quality here. So we got 5 more seconds before we go up to 115%. So 3, 2, 1, and up to that 115%. Accelerate it up, guys. Accelerate it up. Adjust that body position. Don't show any of your discomfort, but keep that power output super steady, super solid, guys. Feel that burn in the legs if it's happening. Welcome that burn in the legs. That's what's going to give us the intended training effect that we want. If the breathing's really heavy, that also will give us the intended training effect we want, but then you got to try to get your breathing in check during this 35-second lower power segment. Okay, so let's ease it down to 75%. If the legs are burning, just change your position on the bike to access different muscles. If your breathing is becoming very uncomfortable, try to lift your head, lift your chest a little bit, focus on the exhalation phase for the next 20 seconds to try to bring that breathing rate back to a steadier rhythm as opposed to panting. Okay, so we got 2 more. Now this next one, again, don't show any pain, discomfort in your body language. Keep it as steady as you can. Do your best Nairo Quintana impression in 3, 2, 1, and go. 35 seconds at 115%. Second to last time we're doing this. You know you're going to be able to do it on the last one. Often the second to last rep is the hardest, so I want you guys to put that effort in. But don't show it. Don't show it on your face. Don't show it in your body language. Keep putting the pressure down into the pedals with a relaxed disposition. So 10 more seconds, guys. Just take note of where you're feeling that discomfort. And if it's in the legs, change your position in this recovery period. So 3, 2, 1, ease it down to 75%. Change your body position to take the pressure out of your legs. Focus on the exhalations to try to regroup your breathing. And now we've come to our final 35-second acceleration. Well, let's go to 115% or more. And you know what? Let's get rid of that Nairo Quintana requirement on this last one. I want you guys to really go for it. When we're this close to the end, if you got to grit the teeth a little bit to get it done, that's okay. So get ready, guys. We have our last effort of the day. 35 seconds, 115% or more in 3, 2, 1, and kick it up quick, guys. Kick it up quick. Accelerate, bring that cadence up. Adjust the gears as need be. And I want you to really bring it home strong. This is going to bring us to 30 minutes of threshold development for the workout, which is just an absolutely tremendous effort. So this is just the cherry on top, guys. 15 more seconds. When there's 10 seconds to go, I want everyone, stay in the gear you're in and increase your cadence. Right now, increase your cadence. Pedal faster all the way to the end. Resist that urge to slow down till you cross the finish. So 3, 2, 1, and that's it, and we're done. Wow, what a final effort. Lots of efforts, over 115% from you guys at home. And a lot of you guys got bang on that 115%. That was fantastic work. Wow, what a way to finish the workout. What a way to bring us to 30 minutes of total time at threshold power, averaging out to 95%. So excellent work. Now just take a moment, reflect back. How does this 4th exercise fit in terms of difficulty relative to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd? So this one, of course, was a little bit more similar to the second one, where you were going between 70 and 120. This time it was 75, 115, but the big difference is there was no requirements on you guys. The 70 to 120, you had to stand on all those 120s. Did that make it feel easier, or did that make it feel harder? Or maybe on this last one, you chose to stand on all of them because that's what works for you, and that's okay too. So just think about that. And also, for the workout as a whole, where did the level of effort or the level of difficulty start to get higher than you expected? Did it happen right away at the beginning? If it happened right away at the beginning, that probably means that you're somebody that's just a little bit slow to warm up. And the 12 to 15 minute warm-ups we give here at PowerWatts might not be enough. So you might want to ride your trainer 15 minutes just easy pedaling before you even start your PowerWatts warm-up. And if you guys really felt that difficulty in the 3rd drill or in the 4th drill, that's expected because that's when we've surpassed that 20-minute total time mark at threshold power at 95%. So hell of a session today, guys. Great job. And just keep in mind with this alternation approach, when you're hitting those high powers, you're really generating those waste products at a faster than usual rate. And at those lower powers, because you didn't go too low, your body is learning how to recycle those waste products and reuse them for energy later on. It's really amazing how the body works on a physiological level. And you definitely got the intended training effect today. So we got a little bit of time left here during the cool down. If you have some extra time to stay on the bike and cool down longer, I'd encourage you to do that too. When you cool down for a longer period of time, that's actually a stimulus to your body to recover faster. So if you're done the session, you get off the bike right away, that's okay. But if you are on a ride again tomorrow and you want to do another more challenging effort tomorrow, you're better off doing much longer recoveries. Oftentimes you'll see the pros, they do a mountaintop finish, and then next thing you know, you see them on camera on a stationary trainer still riding hard. Or not necessarily hard, but slowly easing down that effort instead of suddenly coming to a stop. And that's to help promote recovery so that they're ready to train hard again the next day. Not that I suggest you train hard tomorrow, but if that was your plan, you're going to want to spend more time on the cool down. And in general, spending more time on the cool down is well worth it. It's something that's really oftentimes neglected, especially when we're stuck in such a short period of time. We only have 60 minutes to do our training. So if you have that extra 10-15 minutes, maybe tack on a little bit extra to the warm-up and a little bit extra to the cool down. So thanks so much for joining today, guys. Really great threshold power development workout here. And so far we've had many interesting sessions. Our first 4 sessions have touched many different points. And the sessions that are to come are going to keep improving your fitness and your skills in different ways. So I'm really excited that you guys have chosen to participate in the program up to this point. And I'm excited for you guys to see what we have coming up, because it's going to be really neat stuff. It's going to be really fun training. So 3, 2, 1, and we are done.